Do you know, I have never been abroad. Me, a man in my position. It's unthinkable, isn't it? Every year for the past 5 years, I've gone to some boring English seaside town. But next year will be different. Next year, it's going to be sunshine, beaches.
I've been getting terrible stomach pains. I feel awful.
Well, you've probably been eating too much rich food again.
As a matter of fact, I haven't eaten a thing since yesterday lunchtime.
Well, no wonder you've got stomach pains.
I used to have the same problem, but it was only nerves.
Since when did you have nerves? I've never met anyone as relaxed as you are.
Laid back. That's what they call me. Laid back.
Corin, Mr. Smith hasn't rung yet, has he?
Yes, he rang yesterday.
Well, why didn't you tell me?
I did.
Oh. Billy, that's the second time this week you've been late for work.
And that's the good news. Last week he was late every day.
Thanks, Sarah. You're a real pal. Has anyone ever been to Tenerife?
Yes, about 2 million tourists every week.
You're a snob, Crowley. That's your problem.
Oh, leave him alone, Billy. He's not feeling well.
I went to Italy last year. Italy is really neat.
Neat. Neat. What kind of a word's that to describe a wonderful country like Italy?
Why's everyone been so bad-tempered round here recently?
My family used to go to Tenerife every year. But I haven't been there since I was a child. I expect it's changed a lot since then.
Have you ever been to North Africa, Sarah?
Oh, yes.
It looks really... neat.
I travelled all around North Africa and the Middle East when I was at university.
You've been everywhere, haven't you?
Yes, just about.
Oh, Billy, nip downstairs and put some money into the meter for me, will you?
Yes, Mr. Stenhouse. Oh, I forgot. Your car isn't there at the moment.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't. A friend of yours has just driven it away.
What?
Well, I thought it was a friend of yours.
Well, it wasn't! Why are you so stupid?
Come on, Billy. Let's look at this tape.
What tape?
It's a report I did last week on Charles Dickens.
Charles who?
Dickens. The novelist Charles Dickens has been a best-selling author for a very long time. In fact, since his first work appeared 150 years ago. It was here in this house that he completed the Pickwick Papers. It was here, too, that he wrote Nicholas Nickleby and Oliver Twist. They followed on the success of the Pickwick Papers and established his reputation as a leading author.
Dickens really was the first great popular novelist because he and his publishers had discovered the very useful means of writing in monthly parts, so you could buy parts of novels serially quite cheaply. Dickens had absolutely phenomenal sales, and this continued throughout the 30 or 40 years of his writing life.
Why is he still so popular when so many writers go out of fashion?
I think in the end you put it down to nothing short of genius, that what he was doing was writing for a popular audience in his own time. But like Shakespeare, who was doing much the same in the 16th century, he was writing beyond his time. He just had a genius which made what he touched turn into an art which succeeds in working in another century. I think we're now discovering depths in Dickens that his contemporaries didn't choose to see.
Can you tell me a bit about the house in Doughty Street, which is now the Dickens Museum?
Yes, Dickens because of his sudden rise in fortune and fame in the early 1830s, bought this as his first house, or rather leased it as his first house. He only lived there 2 years, but it is now the only surviving important house that Dickens lived in London. The Dickens Fellowship bought it in the 1920s, and it's been opened as a Dickens museum ever since. Consequently, their collections are extremely rich and extremely interesting, and no other Dickens museum could ever equal it in quality, though there are other small museums throughout Britain. He lived and moved a great deal.
The most important single piece of furniture, perhaps, is this chair. And it's now recovered in the plum-coloured hide that it was originally covered in Dickens's time. And this is, again, was a scholarly, well-researched project. Almost a year in the reconstruction work. This shows Dickens at his farewell readings, using the travelling reading desk, which he had constructed to his own specifications, and this shows him giving his final farewell series of readings. The Chelsea Worm monkey, shown here, is the very monkey that Dickens always had, along with several other ornaments, on his writing desk wherever he was in the world. He had these shipped with him together with his own brand of blue ink and blue writing paper. The character depicted here is one of the key characters of the Pickwick Papers. This is Sam Weller, who, for Dickens, when he introduced this character into the Pickwick Papers, saved the circulation, as at that time it was dropping dangerously low. Dickens reflected on the times here at Doughty Street as being the happiest of his life. Although this period here was marred tragically by the death here of Mary Hogarth, who was his wife's younger sister and was just 17 years of age.
I think the reason why it was so traumatic, because rather uniquely in the 19th century, this was the first death Dickens had intimately had to experience. Both his parents were still alive. This sister-in-law suddenly died of what we think might be a brain tumour, and Dickens was deeply shocked by it. This clearly affects one certain paragraph and certain sections of the novel of Pickwick Papers, where the novel, which is otherwise a very sunny novel, suddenly goes into a deep, dark mood. Dickens's writing of that novel and of Oliver Twist were completely disrupted by this death. And then Mary, I think, went on to influence a great deal of how Dickens treated the death of Little Nell in The Old Curiosity Shop, which was to come later.
Can you tell me about the magazine that you edit, the Dickensian?
It's very much an international circulation. We sell very widely in the United States and in Japan. We sell probably to all the major university libraries in the world, certainly to those in the English-speaking world. We circulate in the Soviet Union, we circulate throughout Eastern Europe, of course in all libraries in India. It's followed Dickens's reputation.
By the autumn of 1839, the house had become too small for Dickens' growing family, and they moved to a larger house in Devonshire Terrace. But it is here, where Dickens achieved his first success, that visitors come in their thousands.
No, I think it's been stolen. What? Yes? Yes, there was a witness. I don't know. I just discovered that it's gone. Yes. All right. In about half an hour. Right. Thanks.
About time, too. I've been waiting nearly 5 minutes, you know.
Oh, have you? That's a pity.
I was going into the office when I noticed a man near Mr. Stenhouse's car. Well, of course, I didn't think that
What did he look like?
Well, he was quite tall. Not very tall. With dark hair. Well, it was sort of dark brown, really. His hair. Sort of brown and blonde. But quite dark.
What was he wearing?
He was wearing a dark blue suit.
Quite sure.
Oh, yes, quite sure. It might have been a grey suit.
And what did you do when you saw this man stealing the car?
Nothing. He did absolutely nothing.
I didn't realise he was stealing it. I've already explained to Mr. Stenhouse that I thought it was a friend of his.
It wasn't really his fault.
That's right. That's absolutely right. It wasn't my fault. You see, when Mr. Stenhouse gave me the money to put in his parking meter...
You mean he asked you to feed his meter?
Oh, yes. I've told him he oughtn't to do that, but Mr. Stenhouse says he's been doing it for years and... Oh, dear.
I didn't hear that.
I said Mr. Stenhouse has been putting money in the parking meter for years and... Oh!
You'd make a great policeman.
We found Gibbs in a hotel room, shot by his own gun, but without his passport.
He'd left it at home in his desk.
Or he forgot it, like you said.
Perhaps I did say that, but I don't believe it. No, I don't think he was planning to go anywhere. I think he went to the hotel to meet somebody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Detective Chief Inspector Phillips. I asked you to contact Mr. Lee.
Ah, yes, sir. Mr. Lee's in the dining room. And someone left this for you.
Oh, thank you. I have information about the murder. Meet me in room 1036 at 10:30.
Who's it from? Who wrote it?
No, it doesn't say. It's 10:25 now.
I'll go. You can talk to Lee.
Good idea. See what you can find out.
Can I have 1036, please?
Do you need any help?
No, thank you.
Do sit down, Inspector.
Thank you.
So, what can I do for you? Oh, sorry, would you like a coffee?
Oh, thank you. Could I have a coffee? You're an airline pilot, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
And you flew in yesterday from...
Kenya. The arrival time was 1700 hours and we were 2 minutes early.
Thank you. And you came straight to the hotel after you landed?
Well, not immediately, but yes, I'd registered here by 6 o'clock, something like that.
Now, Mr. Lee, did you see or speak to that man at all yesterday evening?
You?
I told you we just exchanged a few words.
What about?
Well, we just chatted about the weather. Nothing more than that.
Had you ever seen him before?
Before yesterday?
Yes.
No.
Hmm.
That's the man who was killed, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Well, I'd like to help you, Inspector, but I really don't see...
What were you doing between the hours of 7 and 8 yesterday evening?
You mean, do I have an alibi?
If you want to call it that.
Well, I have one, yes. First, I had dinner in here. Then I went through to the foyer for some coffee afterwards.
Were you alone?
No, I was with a friend of mine, Bernie Raystrick.
You confirm that, will he?
Of course.
Is he a pilot too, this friend of yours?
No, he's a chief steward with another airline.
And where can I find him?
Well, he'll be somewhere over Europe at the moment. He's heading for Tunis. So you can either follow him there or wait till he comes back.
I think I'll wait.
Why didn't you tell us all this last night?
Nobody asked me.
Nobody asked you?
No.
So, before your present job, did you work in other hotels in this area?
Yes, 2.
And Mr. Gibbs, the man who was shot, did he ever stay at these hotels?
Yeah. I must have seen him 6 or 7 times altogether. He always used to order his meals in his room.
You're sure it was him?
I couldn't forget him, could I? Not after the row we had.
What was the row about?
He thought he could treat hotel staff badly. I just showed him he couldn't, that was all.
Was there anyone else with him?
I didn't see anyone.
What's going on in here, please? Oh, Miss,
Detective Constable Maxwell.
I heard voices. And of course I told the staff that no one must come into this room.
I'm interviewing Mr. Kelly.
So I see.
Ta-da!
Can you tell me anything else about Matthew Gibbs?
I could tell you a lot more about him.
The hotel manager?
The hotel manager.
What?
Just that he knows a lot more than he told you.
About Matthew Gibbs's murder?
About lots of things that happen around here.
They don't know as much as I do about Matthew Gibbs's murder. Follow that car!
Billy Barker, you have captured one of Europe's most notorious and dangerous car thieves. After a car chase through the streets of London, you cornered this ruthless villain and brought him to justice single-handed. On behalf of the London Metropolitan Police Force, I would like to present you with this medal and invite you to join the force with the rank of Detective Inspector.
What do you want me to do now, eh? Oi, Governor. You've just gone into that shop. Going to buy paper, I should think.
Oh dear.
Oi! You haven't paid me! You forgot your change!
When he was only 21 years old, Isambard Kingdom Brunel had won a competition for the design of a bridge over the River Avon near the port of Bristol. The Clifton Suspension Bridge still stands today as a working monument to one of Britain's greatest engineers. Brunel was more than just a bridge builder. He designed London's Paddington Station and pioneered the development of a national railway network, not only in this country, but also in Italy, Australia, and India. Brunel's talents extended into shipbuilding. He designed and built the world's first transatlantic steamer, the Great Western. Towards the end of his life, he built the Great Eastern, which for over 40 years was the biggest ship in the world. Here in the docks of Bristol, one of Brunel's ships can still be seen. It is called the Great Britain, and it first sailed for New York in 1845. Well, now the Great Britain is being restored and repaired. The man in charge of the work is Commander Joe Blake. I wonder if you could give us a brief history of the Great Britain.
Yes, very quickly. The ship was built in 1843. That's the date of the launch. She was the very first ship in the world built of iron, designed for trade on the Atlantic. She was also the first ship to cross the Atlantic with a screw propeller, which is a very important system of propulsion, which of course all ships today have. She had a long and interesting life. She was operating on the Atlantic for several years, and then she operated between England and Australia, taking mostly people out who were immigrants to the Australian continent. She also brought back gold from Australia during the time of the Australian gold rush. Later in her life she carried cargo, and in 1886 she ended up in the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic, where she had some damage and had to be used as a store vessel. She was in fact salvaged, as we call it, in 1970. She was actually on a beach in the Falkland Islands then because she'd been left there to rot. And we had to repair the holes in the bottom and make it float. And it was then lifted from the sea on a pontoon or a big barge, which it carried it all across the Atlantic. And it weighed 1,200 tons. And brought it back to England. And of course we put it back into this dock, in fact where it was originally built, which is a most unusual situation.
Did you have any problems getting the ship up the river?
Not as many as we expected. The ship was removed from this barge in Avonmouth at the bottom of the river, and it was then floated, and quite happily floated up the river into the city of Bristol here, and back into its dock. It had very few leaks, and we just had 2 pumps, and only one really was needed.
Is it quite a big job restoring the Great Britain?
Oh, it's quite a major job to restore the ship because of its age, and also because of the complication of the research into the actual layout of the ship. Because when it was built, only a small number of drawings were made. A great deal of the work was done by standard method. Craftsmen worked in accordance with the standards of the time, and there were no proper records made of exactly what was installed.
When the Great Britain is finally restored, there will be one more reminder of the extraordinary achievements of this extraordinary man, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. What do you think?
I don't know. How can I think when I don't have a car?
I found your car, Mr. Stenhouse.